In a quiet attic above a secondhand bookstore, Clara Ellison dipped her brush into ochre and painted a late autumn maple tree that no one had asked for. The bristles moved in quiet arcs, soft like her breath on the window pane beside her. A cluster of golden leaves, held by the last threads of the season, clung to the tree in her painting, caught forever in their most fragile moment. Her fingers, blotched faintly with cadmium yellow and burnt sienna, tightened around the wooden handle of the brush. The tin lunchbox that held her paints sat open on the windowsill, its hinges squeaking faintly every time she dipped into it. It had belonged to her grandmother, who used to hum Moon River while folding laundry or kneading bread. Clara often found herself humming it now, almost as if the attic still echoed with her presence. Downstairs, the bookstore owner was turning the "closed" sign for the evening. In Harrowsfield, most businesses shut by 6. The streets outside her window glowed faintly amber beneath aging lampposts, and somewhere across town, the AM station 101.3 Golden Time played Dean Martin with just enough static to make it feel older than it was. Dinner at the Ellison house came like muscle memory. Clara arrived early, pie in hand, fingers cold from the walk. The porch light flickered once as she rang the bell. Inside, warmth wafted out, not just from the heat, but from the sound of her father's radio humming along to "That's Amore." Madeline's voice greeted her before anyone else. "You're early. You didn't walk again, did you?" Clara smiled faintly. "I like the cold. Clears the air." "Or clouds the brain," Madeline muttered, half joking, half not. She was dressed in a rust-orange blazer that probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent, her hair pulled into a perfect twist. She balanced a wine glass in one hand and a listing sheet in the other. Over dinner, Madeline spoke easily and often. "Closed on that 3-bedroom off Larkspur," she announced. 38 hours on the market. Full cash offer. Client cried from joy. Or maybe she saw the HOA fees. Their father chuckled. "That's our girl." Their mother beamed. "I always said you had the instincts." Clara passed the gravy silently. When her mother asked about her painting, she mentioned, softly, "I just finished a fall series, Maples and Lake Mist." Madeline didn't look up. "Another batch of barn trees?" "Well, at least they're seasonal." The silence afterward hung like fog. Clara folded her napkin and focused on the roast carrots. Her father cleared his throat. "Mortgage rates are creeping again. That damn bank keeps sending me nonsense about equity lines. We'll be fine. Just annoying." Her mother tooted. "You worry too much. It's probably junk mail." Later, Clara reached into her coat pocket and handed her mother a small envelope. "I made these. For next week." Inside were 6 hand-painted Thanksgiving place cards, each edged with watercolor leaves and a name in careful calligraphy. Her mother gave a soft "oh" and ran her fingers over one labeled "Ray." "They're lovely, honey," she said, placing them delicately beside the salt shaker. Madeline leaned over and smirked. "You should really sell these on Etsy, might even make rent." Clara's face didn't change, but her fingers curled in her lap. She said nothing. Her pie was politely sampled, then largely ignored. She helped clear the table and quietly declined leftovers. That night, back in the attic, she painted again. Just a small piece, a memory from Harper's Pond, the way the light caught on the water in early October, how the birches arched over the narrow path like an embrace. The sketch was simple but honest. She tucked it into an envelope and tied it with a faded green ribbon. The next morning, the Porchlight Cafe was already half full by the time Clara arrived. Bells above the door chimed as she stepped into the smell of coffee grounds and cinnamon. Eddie was behind the counter, wiping mugs and muttering to the radio. "Morning, Clara." She handed him the wrapped envelope. "Something small. Thought you might have a spot." He opened it slowly, brows rising as he revealed the little painting. "This yours?" he asked, not quite looking at her. She nodded. Eddie didn't say much. He just grabbed a pushpin from the corkboard behind the register and tacked it up between a poster about apple cider specials and a faded flyer for the library book sale. "Some things need to be seen," he said, almost to himself. Then he turned the dial on the old radio, and Dean Martin's voice filled the room. That night, Eddie stands alone in the cafe, staring at Clara's sketch as customers linger by it longer than usual. By Tuesday, 3 customers had asked if the painting above the tip jar was for sale. Eddie had to keep giving the same answer, not for sale. Just a gift. He didn't elaborate, didn't offer a name, didn't point to Clara, who sometimes sat by the corner window with a sketchpad and a cup of chamomile tea. The curiosity simmered quietly, like the soup in the back kitchen. Clara noticed the glances. She never made eye contact long enough to invite questions. She wasn't used to being looked at for anything other than being Madeline's quieter, less presentable sister. Even praise made her uncomfortable, more so when it came without warning. The compliments weren't loud, but they lingered. One older man, a retired mechanic who played dominoes every Wednesday near the fireplace, told Eddie, "That tree reminds me of the hills before they built the strip mall. Back when you could sit in silence." Eddie passed the words along to Clara later, casually. "Made someone remember," he said as he poured her tea. "That counts." That morning, Liam arrived for his shift with a camera slung around his shoulder and his Vermont Arts League beanie slightly askew. He'd been wearing it for 3 years, ever since Clara gave it to him at the final class she held at the library, back when she still believed her art could teach, not just comfort. "Eddie," he called, brushing the snow from his shoulders. "Mind if I snap a picture of that painting? Lighting's real nice today." Eddie gave a grunt and a shrug that meant yes. Liam adjusted the lens and stepped carefully toward the corkboard. The light from the window fell in soft strips across the watercolor, catching the ridges of the paper. He crouched, framed it with care, and took 3 shots in quick succession. No filters, no gimmicks, just color and quiet. That night, he posted one of the photos online with the caption, "Some things speak loudest when they don't ask to be heard." He didn't tag Clara. He didn't have to. He just tagged the cafe and the town. By the next afternoon, the post had several dozen likes, mostly from local accounts, a few from regional art lovers who followed Liam's page for his small-town photojournalism. Clara saw the post while scrolling idly between brushing layers of gold onto a new piece. Her breath caught when she recognized her tree. It felt strangely intimate, like someone had read a private letter. When she asked Eddie about it, he simply said he wanted to honor it. People forget that's a form of thank you, too. She looked down, cheeks warm. "I didn't think anyone noticed." At the diner that evening, a woman in a lavender cardigan leaned over her chicken chowder to tell Clara, "That painting in Eddie's cafe, it's yours, isn't it? The way you did the shadows under the leaves, you've got a real eye, dear." Clara stirred her soup and offered a faint smile. It was just a thank you. But the words stayed with her longer than the meal. She walked home slowly, snow crunching under her boots, wondering how something she'd painted in silence had begun to ripple outward. The next morning, Eddie handed her a folded piece of paper. Email from a woman named Marjorie. She runs a gallery in Boston. Says she saw the photo Liam posted. Wants to see more. Clara froze. She's asking for 3 more paintings, Eddie added. For possible inclusion in their winter exhibit. That's a big ask, but it's not a demand. Clara stared at the email, the text smudged slightly from Eddie's fingerprint. "I don't think I'm ready for galleries." Eddie's voice was even. "She called your work silent poetry." Said it gave her pause. Clara blinked. Eddie reached below the counter and pulled out a clean envelope. "I'll write back for you if you want. But I need to ask." He looked at her gently, like someone opening a door but waiting to see if she'd walk through it. "Do you have any others?" She nodded, but whispers, they were never meant to be seen. The package of paintings left Harrowsfield in a plain brown wrapper, like a secret whispered into the world. Clara had wrapped each piece with care, layering thin parchment between the frames so the paint wouldn't scuff. Her handwriting on the shipping label was small and deliberate, see, no full name, no flourish. Just enough to be found, not enough to be recognized. She watched the courier van roll down Maple Street from her attic window, its brake lights blinking twice before fading into the swirl of early snow. Her hands were still cold even though she hadn't stepped outside, and she stood there for a long time, holding her brush but not painting. Thanksgiving was 3 days away, and Harrowsfield was gearing up as it always did, paper turkeys taped to storefront windows, the annual parade banner stretched across Main Street, and the diner's chalkboard now listing pecan pie, $3 a slice, whipped cream extra. Eddie had added a small pumpkin centerpiece to each cafe table, and a new sign above the corkboard read, "Local Art." Not for sale, yet. Clara hadn't asked him to do it. She wouldn't have. But he did it anyway, as though reminding the town, and maybe Clara herself, that something valuable had been blooming quietly here all along. She received a call from Madeline that afternoon, cheerful and clipped as always. "Don't forget the wine," her sister said. "And maybe try not to wear anything you've painted in? It's Thanksgiving, not a studio tour." "I'll wear a sweater," Clara said, knowing it wouldn't matter. "Perfect. And pie, right? You're still bringing your famous crust." "Sure." By the time Thursday arrived, the Ellison home smelled of nutmeg and nostalgia. Mrs. Ellison had polished the good silver and layered the dining table with autumn-toned runners and ceramic pumpkins. Madeline had added glass nameplates, sleek, shiny, clearly ordered online, at every seat. Clara's hand-painted gratitude cards, slipped discreetly into each setting, were barely acknowledged. Her pie joined a store-bought pecan and a towering whipped cream trifle on the sideboard. No one took the first slice. Mr. Ellison was quieter than usual. When no one was watching, he stepped into the hallway and took out his phone. The call to the bank was short. The news was what he expected, but it still made him sit down afterward in the armchair beside the coat rack and rub his temples like a man much older than he was. During dinner, Clara said little. She watched, smiled at appropriate moments, and passed the gravy when asked. She felt like a placeholder in her own family, not unwelcome exactly, just unnoticed, like a background painting in someone else's house. Later that night, back at the cafe, Eddie met her with a glint in his eye and a printed email in hand. "From Marjorie," he said. Clara raised her brows. "One of the 3 paintings sold," Eddie continued. "Private collector. 18,000. Clara stared at him. "There's more," he added. "Same buyer wants exclusive rights to your Vermont Autumn series. Marjorie says it's the cleanest offer she's seen all quarter." Clara's legs felt unsteady. She pulled out a stool and sat. 18, she whispered. 1,000. Eddie nodded. "Your work spoke to someone." Clara took the paper from him, her eyes scanning the lines as if they might vanish. She thought about the gratitude cards still left untouched at her parents' table. The pie no one had cut. The comment about sweaters. And then, as though responding to some echo in the room, Eddie asked gently, "You going to tell them?" She folded the paper in half, then again, until it was the size of a matchbook. "They wouldn't believe it anyway." "Who is this E?" Madeline asked aloud at breakfast, holding up a glossy magazine. "Their paintings look just like Vermont." The cover featured a watercolor so familiar in color and shape that Clara's breath caught without her realizing. Soft golden leaves drifting across a lake, hills fading into lavender dusk. Her hills. Her lake. Mr. Ellison looked up from his coffee. "CE. Anonymous artist," Madeline said, flipping pages with a manicured thumb. "Gallery in Boston picked them up, sold one for 18 grand, apparently. Now they want full rights. This feature says the next collection might double in value." Mrs. Ellison clucked her tongue. "That much? For watercolors?" Clara took a sip of tea and kept her eyes on the butter dish. Madeline grinned, holding up the magazine again. "Wouldn't it be something if we got a few of these prints staged in the houses I'm listing? Nothing says cozy New England like Misty Maples." Her voice had changed. It wasn't mocking anymore. It was curious. Opportunistic. Clara recognized the shift, she'd seen it when Madeline talked to clients on speakerphone. Friendly interest with a purpose. "Well, whoever they are," Madeline added, "they've got an eye. Shame no one knows who they are." Could have made a killing. Clara kept quiet. Later that day, the Ellison kitchen hummed with Sinatra on the radio and the scent of cinnamon from a half-prepared apple crumble. Clara was helping her father in the hall closet, digging for the box of holiday candles when a slip of paper fluttered out from between the shelf boards. It was another mortgage notice, final reminder. Red ink, heavy words. She paused. Found the garlands, her father called from the next room. Clara tucked the letter into her coat pocket before answering. That evening, at the Porchlight Cafe, Eddie was wiping down the chalkboard menu when Clara arrived. He didn't speak right away, just nodded toward the corkboard. The pine-scented candle beside her sketch had been lit, its soft glow catching in the glass frame. She gave him a look, amused. "You know people will ask," she said. "They already are," he replied. Still not telling. Then he pulled a folded printout from beneath the register. "Marjorie again," he said. "Same collector as before, wants exclusive rights to the Vermont Autumn series. 96,000. Clean contract, legal review done." Clara took the paper with both hands, holding it as if it might tear under the weight of meaning. She read the numbers 3 times. Then looked up. "They're offering this much, for trees?" "For how you saw them," Eddie corrected. That night, she sat at her desk in the attic, fingers trembling slightly as she opened her laptop. She typed slowly, deliberately, double-checked routing numbers, and submitted the payment. Name on the transfer, Ceta E. Harper. The exact amount listed on the overdue notice. No message attached. No claim. Only clarity. Early the next morning, her inbox chimed. She opened the email and read the subject line twice. Confirmation, mortgage account paid in full, thank you to our anonymous benefactor. Her hand hovered over the trackpad, then slowly clicked the trash icon. Clara receives a thank you email from the bank address to anonymous benefactor. Her hand trembles as she deletes it. In the heart of Boston, under the soft glow of track lights and garlands, Clara's paintings hung like windows into forgotten moments. The gallery had been transformed for the winter opening, white walls softened by pine wreaths, golden fairy lights tucked around floorboards, and the scent of hot cider weaving through the air like memory. The snow outside had turned the street into a muted watercolor, but inside, her work glowed quietly, as if breathing. No name was displayed beside the paintings, only the discreet initials, C.E. Guests wandered slowly through the exhibit, some cradling glasses of mulled wine, others standing with folded arms and furrowed brows. Words like a stillness, melancholy, and a truthful light drifted between them, spoken softly, reverently. Clara stood near the back, beside a potted fir, hands clasped behind her coat. She wore a dark green scarf and kept her chin low. She wasn't there to be seen, only to see. Marjorie moved through the crowd like a quiet conductor, greeting patrons, answering questions, but never pointing toward Clara. She honored the boundary they'd agreed on, anonymity, at least for now. Liam, in a borrowed blazer and his Vermont Arts League beanie tucked under his arm, snapped photos for the gallery's online catalog. He gave Clara a brief nod when their eyes met, and she nodded back, grateful. Just before the event had opened, she'd slipped him a signed sketch, one he hadn't asked for but had clearly treasured. A small cabin beneath snow-heavy trees, titled simply, "For Those Who Wait." Back in Harrowsfield, the Ellison house was quiet except for the hum of the kitchen radiator and the occasional creak of roof timbers under the weight of new snow. Mr. Ellison had gone through the mail that afternoon and paused when he saw the bank's return address. He opened the letter slowly, his breath catching as he scanned the words twice, then a third time. Mortgage, paid in full. No sender listed. No note enclosed. He called Madeline into the kitchen. She read it and frowned. "Did you refinance?" He shook his head. "Then who?" Her eyes narrowed. By the time evening fell, Madeline was sitting at the dining room table, the magazine spread out before her again. She flipped back to the feature on ACE, rereading the captions, the language about Vermont landscapes, the emotional restraint in brushwork. She looked toward the bookshelf where one of Clara's old sketches leaned, one she had once dismissed as too muted. She didn't wait. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she climbed the steps to the bookstore and knocked on the side door that led to Clara's attic. When there was no answer, she turned the handle and let herself in. Clara looked up from her easel, startled but not surprised. She'd been working on a new piece, winter trees, heavy with snow, bending toward each other as if whispering. Madeline didn't sit. She stood near the center of the room, taking it all in, the worn tin lunchbox of paints, the shelf stacked with neatly rolled canvases, the faint smell of turpentine and lavender. "It's you," she said. Not a question. Clara wiped her fingers on a cloth. "Yes." Madeline stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "The paintings. The initials. The mortgage. It was all you." Clara hesitated, then nodded once. "It was never meant to be a secret. Just, not a performance." Madeline folded her arms, glancing at the canvas behind Clara. "Why didn't you say anything?" Clara looked down at her brush. "Because I didn't do it to win you over." Madeline didn't respond at first. She took a slow breath, then turned to face the half-finished painting. "You were always better than I let myself admit." Under the Christmas tree, wrapped in faded sheet music, sat one gift with no name, just a hand-drawn pine branch and a small envelope marked "Peace." The Ellison living room glowed in the soft flicker of firelight, the tree decked in warm white lights and decades-old ornaments. The radio hummed low with Sinatra's "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," and the scent of gingerbread and clove clung to the air. Snow pressed quietly against the window panes, muffling the world outside. Mrs. Ellison moved from the kitchen with a tray of eggnog, her apron smudged with flour. Mr. Ellison stoked the fire, his motions slower than usual, though calmer. Madeline stood beside the tree, tilting her head at the mystery package, its wrinkled sheet music catching the firelight just so. "Who's this one from?" she asked. No one answered. They passed it around until it reached Mr. Ellison's lap. He untied the twine, folded back the pages of "Oh Holy Night," and opened the envelope tucked beneath the pine branch drawing. Inside, he found a deed. Their home, fully paid. A note written in familiar, looping script read, "No debt. No shame. Just start over." No one spoke at first. The fireplace popped softly. Then Mrs. Ellison brought a hand to her mouth, eyes glistening. Madeline read the line again. She didn't have to guess. Not anymore. When the knock came on the front door 10 minutes later, no one moved. Then Madeline stepped forward and opened it. Clara stood there in a wool coat and a knit scarf, holding a pie in one hand and a thin brown envelope in the other. "I figured I'd come for dinner," she said. Mr. Ellison cleared his throat. "Of course. It's your home too." Inside, the table was set with china and crystal. But at each place, tucked neatly above the forks, sat Clara's handmade cards, this time in deep forest green with gold ink names and snowflake flourishes. No one moved them. No one ignored them. Dinner was quieter than most Ellison gatherings, but warmer in a way none of them expected. Conversation found gentler rhythms. Mrs. Ellison asked about Clara's trip to Boston. Mr. Ellison mentioned finding a photo of Clara as a child holding a paintbrush like a sword. Then Madeline stood with her wine glass raised. "To second chances," she said, and seeing what was always there. Clara looked down for a moment, smiling into her lap. Later Eddie and Liam arrived with a small package wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside was a framed print from the gallery exhibit, Clara's lake painting, softly lit and signed with initials. Liam handed it to her with both hands. "Also," he said, "I got in. Vermont School of Art. Full ride." Clara's breath caught. "Liam." "Because of you," he said. Mr. Ellison stood. His chair scraped softly on the floor. He walked around the table, arms stiff, expression unreadable. Then he stopped beside Clara, took a breath, and pulled her into a hug. It wasn't grand or teary. Just solid. Present. "I'm sorry we didn't see it," he murmured. Clara leaned into the moment, letting it be enough. After dinner, while others cleared plates and stirred cocoa, she stepped into the living room and set a small frame on the mantel. Inside was the original sketch Eddie had once hung behind the cafe counter. The ink had faded a little, but the lines still held quiet grace. Beneath it, in delicate handwriting, were 2 words, "For home." On a quiet Christmas night, beneath the flicker of firelight and the hush of falling snow, one small painting returned to the mantel where it all began. It wasn't signed with a full name, but with a presence finally seen, finally understood. Sometimes, the gentlest acts, the ones done without expectation, without applause, carry the deepest weight. Kindness doesn't ask to be recognized, it simply leaves light behind. Like a porch lamp left on through the night, its warmth may be quiet, but it shows someone the way home. If this story touched something in you, perhaps let it echo in a simple gesture of your own. The smallest grace may be the one someone remembers forever.